In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to bring a character into Maya and rig that character for animation or motion capture or for use with things like Mixamo animations. But I'm not going to do any manual rigging myself. We're going to use mGear, a rigging framework that's free to download and to use for things like this, to give us animator-friendly controls that we can use to clean up any motion capture animation from a source like Mixamo, or if we want to just manually animate the character, we can do that too. So for this video, I have 3 goals. Number 1, I'm going to show you how to bring the character in and use mGear to create a rig that is animator-friendly. Number 2, we're going to set that same character up for motion capture retargeting. You can use it to bring in Mixamo animations in this particular example and apply it directly to the controls on our rig that we've created for this character. And the third thing, I'm going to show you how to take advantage of this particular rig, the reason why we're using mGear. So if you have a bunch of FK controls, you can easily convert all the feet to IK and immediately fix things like foot sliding or any other weirdness that you might have in your motion in your data. And if you're not doing the Mixamo mocap stuff and you're just doing animation and setting the character up for that, these are also tools that you're going to want to know how to use within your mGear rig. And from there, you just use the workflows that you're most comfortable with. So let's do it. So here's Mixamo. It is free to use. You just need an Adobe account. There's a bunch of different characters you can grab. You can also add meshes to it and have it auto rig the character. And what it'll do is put bones in the character and skin it, but it won't actually create for you an animation friendly rig. So that's what we're going to do today. Once you log in, you can just browse through the characters. When you find one, it usually comes in a T pose, which is helpful. We actually want that to be in a T pose as opposed to an A pose, for example, but pick whoever you want. Let's go with Michelle. She's a little bit more fun. She has an actual face and fun yellow pants. So go ahead and just download the character. We'll leave everything as default. FBX T-pose, great. Download. Once you picked a character, the next thing is to go to the animations tab. And from here, you can pick any animation you want to mess with. And you can see that if I click on any of these animations, it will apply the motion to the underlying skeleton. You can adjust the animation intensity if you want to, but this isn't a Mixamo tutorial. I feel like this is all pretty self-explanatory. We'll take our silly dancing and we'll go ahead and just download that as well. With the default settings, for example, with skin, it's actually going to download the entire character with the skeleton underneath. But you can always change this and turn it to without the skin if you just want like the skeleton and the bones. The only other thing you need is mGear itself. This is not something that comes default with Maya, so you want to download this. It's free to download and go ahead and install that on your own. Read the instructions if you have any difficulty. You shouldn't have problems depending on your version of Maya. There were some Python things that made this really complicated in certain versions, but as of mGear 5, it doesn't need PyML anymore, which means that your download experience should be much, much easier than you may or may not have experienced in the past. Either way, download mGear and let's jump into Maya. You'll know this is installed correctly when you actually see the mGear dropdown. If you don't have this here, check your settings and preferences and make sure you actually have mGear loaded in your preferences. And so once you have the mGear menu here, you're good to go. To start us off with our character setup, I'm going to go to the mGear menu here. I'm going to go into Shifter and I'm going to hit the Plebes button. That is going to open this window. I can close this. I don't need it anymore. And I'm also going to open Windows, General Editors, the namespace editor. We're going to need this momentarily. Now you can just use these instructions, but I'm going to walk you through the steps. First thing we need to do is import the FBX of the character we want to work with. I saved mine to the assets folder, and let's go ahead and bring in Michelle that we've downloaded. Here she is with her textures and everything else. Inside the rig, there are a bunch of bones, and it is a skinned mesh. So she's good to go. I'm going to adjust my gamma just so I can see her a little bit better. But once the character's in here, first thing I'm actually going to do, because it's a Mixamo rig, I'm going to delete the namespace. If I switch the character template to Mixamo, you can see that it also tells you, hey, remove the namespace. So that's what we're about to do. I'm also going to open the outliner so I can show you what's about to go down. Here's my outliner. You can see that all the different bones have the namespace Mixamo rig, colon, and then everything else. So I'll keep an eye on that. But over here in the namespace editor, I'm going to select Mixamo rig, delete it. And in this case, I can just hit merge with root. And you can see it deleted all of the namespaces from this list of things. Also, just to point it out, I'm not in an existing Maya file. I'm not doing this with my shot. I want to do this in a clean Maya environment. So I started from a fresh file, did the import, and you want to do this like on its own, just in case I didn't say that. Now the namespace is gone, we're done with that tool. We can now import our guides, and that's going to bring in a little sort of guide template of the character, which will pop up down here by the character's feet. I can now say align guides, which will snap it to actually line up with the bones of the character. And we can hit build rig. This is now going to auto rig the character, or it'll build an automatic rig for the character definition. There it is. So now you can see that there's a bunch of control curves that don't yet do anything. Now we just need to attach it to the character. You can either constrain it to the rig or skin it to the rig. Use cases vary depending on what you want to do. I typically just hit constrain to rig and this will work great. So now I can take these controls and we are set to go. The character is fully rigged. There are a whole bunch of face controls and bones and things for like the eyes and the mouth. This character doesn't have those in the actual skeleton, so they're going to get ignored, but the controls will just sit there floating around. So not a big deal. We are now done with the autorig tool, but to finish setting us up for animation, I would recommend we do a few last sort of cleanup things. For example, the guide is still here. We don't need this guide, so let's go ahead and take this and turn the visibility off. Just hide the guide. We could probably delete it too, but for the moment, I'm just going to hide it. I'm also going to take the character's skeleton, which is here, the entire hips hierarchy. I'm going to take that and turn the visibility off of that as well. We don't want to see or select the joints. If I try to drag select and there's joints in the scene, it won't grab my character controls. It'll always grab the joints. So we want to hide that. And then also there's this thing called rig. This is the actual rig that we generated. We want to do the same thing here, but by selecting the rig, we have a couple of different options. We can turn the entire rig off, which we don't want. We want the controls. So we can say, for example, control visibility, right? We do want that, but we can turn off joint visibility, which is inside here. So the joint visibility will turn off. And the other thing you might want to consider is control X-ray. Turning control X-ray on, you can see how many controls are actually hidden inside the character's geometry. For example, here inside her torso, she has various controls that are inside the mesh that we cannot see unless we are X-raying. So you might want that, you might not, that's up to you. And the default behavior is control visibility on playback, which means if I hit play, the controls disappear until I pause. So if you want to adjust that, that lives here as well. Other than that, I want to actually say show, and I'm going to hide my nerves curves for a second. I'm using the hotkey Alt-1 to do this, but I'm just going to hide all my controls so I can select the mesh data. I'm going to create a display layer with all the mesh in there so I can set it to reference and I can no longer grab the geometry. So now there's nothing to grab but the controls. So far, so good. Almost finished. Last thing is if there are any controls that are not going to be used, like these face controls, they don't actually connect to anything on the character. These are things that we can hit F in our outliner to sort of expand and look for them. And we can go find all these extra controls inside of the head. So following the hierarchy down, we have this section with the mouth, the eyes, all of that. I'm just going to take all these and hit H to hide them. This character doesn't have a moving mouth or eyes to look around or anything like that. She's meant to just have head rotation, and that's about it. So I can hide all that facial control stuff and it's not going to affect me. This character is now set up and ready for basic character animation. Let's go ahead and save this in our assets folder as Michelle, and I'm ready. Save. Now, before we go any further, let's take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. As you probably know, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of courses across a ton of different categories, whether it's animation, illustration, graphic design, video production. There's a ton of stuff on there. And hopefully you already know about the original series that I've created for Skillshare that covers Maya animation and Blender animation. But if you're looking to learn something else, maybe a little bit of Unreal Engine or virtual production, which is where you take your 3D skills and combine them with live action filmmaking, then maybe you want to check out the Unreal Engine 5 for Beginners, learn the basics of virtual production. This is a course that gives you that experience of working with a new tool and also brings in sort of that live action filmmaking aspect, which of course that's kind of what virtual production is all about. So whether you want to get deeper into your knowledge of animation or switch over to something new and learn a new skill, the first 500 people to use my link in the description or to scan this QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, which is more than enough time to check out my entire series of courses or explore all the many other classes that Skillshare has to offer. So check out that link or the QR code to get started today. Next up, we want to set the character up for retargeting, which is the process of taking motion capture skeletal data and having our character follow those joints. Now, typically, you tell Maya, hey, these are the bones, and we're going to put all the motion directly onto the bones. And then there's tools to be able to generate other skeletal data. But in our case, we want to do this from an animation perspective. So I'm going to go up to the top right corner, and I'm going to open the HIK editor. I'm going to create a character definition for motion capture, but I'm going to trick Maya into thinking that these controls are the bones, because eventually I want to have whatever motion's happening put onto my controls, not onto the skeleton underneath. I'm going to take something on here, and I'm going to say create character definition. Now I am defining a character. First thing I want to do here is select the hips. This is the main mover of my character, and I'm going to right click on the hips control and say assign selected bone. Again, Maya is expecting bones. I'm giving it controls. This will work just fine. Now, I don't need to select every single little thing on the rig. I have to be strategic. You have to pay a little bit more attention to what you are assigning. So here it's looking for spine, and inside here it's looking for additional spine joints. You don't have to fill these all out, just what you want. I'm looking for FK joints exclusively, unless you want to retarget to IK controls. This is kind of up to you. You can go a little bit rogue here and do something different than me if you want. But for the way that the system is expecting this to work, I'm going to grab the next FK spine joint and assign that as spine the base. Then I can go in here, and if I would like to, I have another FK spine joint. I can assign that as spine 1. I'm not going to worry about this one. This is the spine IK control. It's designed to work a little bit differently. It's not quite the same. It doesn't do the same types of rotation, so I'm not going to put that in here. Next up, let's do the neck. Let me jump into the neck view, and I'll grab the base of the neck here. I do have a second neck joint, but I personally don't like to use that very much. I don't love that. I'll just use the base neck and then the head. So I skip the next one, but that's up to you. Then I'm going to take the head, assign that there, and then we go to the clavicles. If I jump in the right shoulder, take the clavicle control, throw that there, and then I'll go ahead and do the left clavicle. If you're lucky, some of these will automatically fill themselves out. So for example, if I grab her right arm, right click, assign, it did actually left and right because it figured out through the naming convention which one's which. So I can just say, all right, now lower arm, that's the forearm, and then the hand control or the wrist, that is going to be my right hand. As you can see, that did that for both sides. One of the more tedious things now is to jump into the right hand view. And if you have hand animation, then you can go ahead and apply each of these. And I can apply the thumb, and the thumb, and the thumb. Whatever that data interprets as these different finger joints, you get to decide where on the new character you want to put them. So you can always like change where these things are. They don't have to match one for one, but obviously that's kind of what you're going for. But since different characters have different like levels of detail of how many bones and joints they have, you can get kind of creative and decide how you'd like to apply this. And if your motion capture data doesn't have hands, then you can skip this process. In this particular case, this dancing animation, you can see that her fingers are actually curled, so she does have hand animation. They're not just flat paddles, so I do want to go through this process. It often does not figure out the fingers of both sides. You have to do this for both. Now we need to make a change for the legs. Typically, when you create a rig, it gives you the legs in IK, meaning that if I move the foot, it will move the entire leg around. We don't want that because motion capture is an FK-based system. So I want to switch to my channel box, and then with this rig, it's a little bit hard to see. If I make the color different, you can see right here in front of the character, these little dots, these are my options for FK and IK. So if I go to the feet ones, I can switch the FK-IK blend from 1 to 0, and then that'll switch me to FK feet. Now when I go back to my HIK editor, I can say upper legs, select, lower legs, select, and then finally the foot. Now I do want to go into the foot, but I may also want to jump into the toe section because if the foot has the option to do a bend like this, then I probably want to assign that as the right toe base because most motion capture has the ability to do this like foot flexing. So I don't want to lose that. We did it for both sides. We're good to go. This character now has all the correct assignments. However, it's not going to work just yet. To tell it that we're done, we need to hit this lock button. It's probably not going to let us do it though. Down here, there's an error. And what it's going to tell us is that the scale controls are locked on several of the controls. When you're doing bones, this doesn't happen. When you're doing controls, this often will happen. So now what I need to do, so now we go into our attribute editor, Control A is my hotkey to do this. And I'm going to check all of my controls in the control area. And I'm going to make sure that for every control that I used to assign something in the HIK editor, I right click and unlock these various scale controls. I want to make sure all translate, rotates, and scales are free to mess with as I please. They don't all need it. You can see these two spine ones are good. The neck one should be good. The head one should be good. The shoulder should be fine. It's going to be the arms most likely. There we go. Unlock, unlock. Lower arm, same thing. And probably the wrist as well. No, wrist is good, but I'm going to do it for both sides. A reminder that you cannot do this with a referenced character. This is because we imported the character and we're working with the direct file that we're able to do this super easily. If we were working with referenced characters, it would give us an error and say, you can't unlock things. This is a referenced object. It's read only. But in our case, we need to make sure that every control that we need is unlocked. We should be good now. So back to the HIK editor. Now I'm going to try to lock the definition. Did it work? Hold on, try again. There we go. I clicked it, it locked it, it's fine. The only other thing that might happen if you have a problem right now is it might have an error that says, hey, the arms aren't parallel to the x-axis, because you do have to make sure it is a pretty perfect T-pose. So if that were the case, you would just take the controls and you would make a slight adjustment to make sure that they are actually lined up. If I unlock this and then break that, you'll see that I have an error. It won't let me do it. So I need to fix that before I lock the character. Now I'm good to go. Once that's locked, it's good. Let's go ahead and hit this little button and rename this to Michelle, because that's her name. Now, before I fully finish, this is time consuming. This took a little bit of time and it's a pain in the butt. And so you may as well just hit save and save this skeletal definition as a template so you can just load this again in the future. And I could just call this Michelle, but realistically, it's looking for the name of certain bones. And this is an mGear template. So I can actually just call this mGear, because the bones that it's looking for, they're not specific to Michelle, especially because I deleted the namespace. It doesn't have anything in the actual like asset names over here on the left to indicate that this is this specific character. This is the rig that I'm going to apply to any Mixamo character. So I'll make my template called mGear. An example bone is whatever it is. And if it has a prefix, then I would put that here. That's like namespace kind of stuff. I don't actually want body CO to be the prefix because not every single bone has that prefix. So I'm actually going to just delete that and hit OK. So now in the future, if I ever, for example, hit none, if I ever create a character definition and I say, ooh, I want to make a definition of this character, let's start it from scratch, I can just pick one of the controls. I could say load, and I could grab the mGear template. You can see it's looking for the prefix. It's not necessarily going to find it. And so what I'll usually do is match only selected bones. If I have only that one control selected, it's just going to grab that one control. So what I will usually do is I'll select the main like master control down here. I'll go to select hierarchy and it'll grab everything in the rig. Then I say load template mGear match only the selected bones, which is going to be everything I have selected. And it will now find all of the individual bones based on their names for that selection. And then I could go ahead and lock this. So I don't actually need this like character one. That's just like a duplicate. I'm going to go ahead and just say delete. Don't need that. So I'm back to just the one I made, Michelle, the one that we did together. So now I'm just left with Michelle, the one that we did together. And you'll notice that there's a definition area and a controls area. So if you ever click here and it's empty, don't panic. It's just a different tab. Now that's done. It's saved. It's renamed. We're good to go. I can just save over this, or I could save as and call this Michelle, I don't know, ready. So the whole rig is ready as opposed to just being only animation ready. I don't know. I could probably just hit save and not make a save as, but I like to be thorough. Now our character is entirely ready for animation, whether manual or motion capture. All right, now if we were setting up our character, I'm going to make a new scene file. I want to make sure I go to a clean file and let's emulate a regular working experience. I'm going to reference in my character, same as always, and I'll just grab Michelle ready. Here she comes with the full rig, everything exactly as we want, all the visibility is set. If I want to apply the animation from Mixamo, I'm going to say File, Import, and I saved those here in the data folder. I'm going to go ahead and grab the silly dancing FBX. And you can see in this particular case that we are given the entire character with the motion. Like I said, if you have the skin turned on in the download, then it gives you the actual character skin along with the underlying skeleton. If I delete this character and instead just import the version with this one here, this one had the skin turned off. It's just the bones. So take what you will. You can do it either way. It does not change the process whatsoever. I'll do this one so it's really clear what I'm doing. Now what I need to do is go to the HIK editor and I need to teach Maya that this skeleton here is actually a character that we can assign this character to follow. In order to do that, we have to do that character definition once again, but it's going to be really, really easy to do. I want to start with a T-pose. We must have a T-pose. If you're working with motion capture from Xsens or Rococo or, you know, an official Mocap solution, typically it's going to give you a T-pose as your first or 0th frame. But in this particular case, our first frame is actually posed. Now I'm also noticing that my keys are all over the place. They're like snapped weird. So I'm going to switch this from 24 to 30 FPS. There we go. Much cleaner because I downloaded the files at 30 frames per second. And so I had non-whole frame keys a second ago. That's going to save me a lot of trouble realizing that now. But anyway, this first frame, I want it to be a T-pose, and I could open my graph editor and, you know, by the way, if I select this entire thing, I'm gonna grab all the joints. It actually only grabs the top level joint. So I wanna make sure I select this and go to select hierarchy. I have a hotkey for this, but it'll grab then all of the joints inside of this rig. There's all the animation data. If I wanted to, I could shift everything over and make like a clean frame here. I typically just overwrite the first 0th frame, but let's just say we want to preserve all of our data. I'll make this frame, and with every control selected, so once again, I can't just drag select, I have to say drag select, select, hierarchy. I want to take all of the rotation channels and 0 them out. Just rotation, not translation, because if I hit translation, the rig is going to crumple in on itself, and I don't want that to happen. And the feet are not in the right spot, so I could also take the hips and kind of push them up. I don't know exactly where they need to be. This would be easier if I still had the character mesh in here. It doesn't really matter. Either way, we need this to be in a T-pose for the same reason as before. If I go to the HIK editor and I go to none, I make sure I specify that there's no character selected. I'm going to select this and say create character definition. Now, since this is just the Mixamo skeleton, we don't have to spend all that time selecting all these and doing it manually again. We can just select one of the controls. And since it has the Mixamo rig namespace attached to it, I can just say load from the template HIK. This should work. And I'll look for the prefix Mixamo rig. That's going to search the namespace and grab all bones in that area. And from that, I should just be able to lock it down. Done. Easy. It's also better that this happens at origin, right here at the middle of the scene. I'm going to rename this character to, I'll just call it Mixamo motion. So it's really, really clear. So now I've got the character Mixamo motion. I'm going to set this back to none. In the HIK editor, I'm going to now specify the character I'm messing with is Michelle, and the source of her motion isn't just herself, it's actually going to be coming from Mixamo motion. This will now snap the character. You can see that the controls were left here, but the controls that we messed with in the assignment, and immediately you can see that all of the defined controls that we said were bones, and we told them, hey, hips, hips, spine, spine. It now knows how to link that data together, and she's doing the dance. And what's great about this is all that bone data is now being put on the correct control for our rig. Now we want to actually be able to edit this ourselves. So what we're going to do is hit this big blue thing, and we're going to bake to the skeleton. You might think it's a control rig because it's a rig, but don't hit this. This will create a new Maya-based control rig. That's not what we want. We actually want to bake it to quote unquote the skeleton because it thinks that those controls are bones. So we're good with bake to skeleton. You could open the option box and adjust certain things if you want to just bake it to every other frame or use layers or something. I'll leave all the defaults and just hit bake. It'll play through once, and it will take all of that rotational data from the skeleton and put it on our rig. So if I move this over here, now you can see that I've got all the data. So I can completely delete the imported motion capture data for now if I'd like to. So now we've got the character doing her dance, and that's pretty great. Now, the only problem with this is she's currently set to FK, meaning that if we want to mess with the feet, if we see that the feet are sliding around or anything, which they're not really that bad. They're doing mostly okay. But if I wanted to make adjustments, I have to like rotate the legs, and I got to deal with all these keyframes, right? Because every single control on this character, on every single frame, it's a lot of data that is now keyed. There's all this spaghetti to deal with. So first thing to do is take advantage of the mGear rig. The whole reason we use this in the first place, the mGear dropdown has this little setting for the mGear viewport menu. What that means is if I select my FK feet that are all rotation based, if I right click and hold while selecting, so if I'm not selecting anything, I get to right click the Maya marking menu. But if I select the foot control and I right click and drag, I get the mGear menu. And I can say range switch. So I can do an IK-FK switch, but I can do a range switch. And I'll just say for the entire keyframe range, I want to switch to IK. And now it will calculate what that FK skeleton leg would look like in an IK solution. So I'm going to go ahead and switch both of the legs. I do them independently just so that there's no issues. You can also specify a certain range if you don't want to do the whole timeline. But now all my animation is exactly the same, but I can now use the IK controller to move her feet around the way I would normally want to work. And so now I can go in the graph editor and make my adjustments as usual. And the last thing to show you is that now we have fully set this up. If I am doing some kind of cleanup or adjustments to the data, yes, I can absolutely go in and tweak the base keyframe data, which I would do a lot of the time. So here's an example. There looks like there's some kind of a hitch in the data right here. All of these channels sort of lock up right here and nothing moves. I don't know if I like that. Seems like that's a mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and just smooth this section out. So that's an example of actually adjusting the raw data. But let's say I want to make a change where I don't have to deal with all that. I can also use animation layers, which I have a whole video on, by the way. Let's say that her head, she's kind of doing her thing, looking around. Maybe I want her to look at a friend. She's dancing at the club, she's having a good time, and she sees her friend. I'm going to take the head control, and I'm going to add it to an animation layer. I'm going to name this head, because only the head is in this layer. And I'm going to key it at the beginning, and maybe I'll key it here at the end, just so I don't change everything. And I'll say that here, I'm going to have her turn and look over. Go ahead and add an arc here, right? And she does a little head dip like that. And because I'm in a layer, I can specify which set of data I want to look at. Here's all that keyframe data that's already here. And there's another hitch that I probably need to fix right there. But if I'm just doing my own animation, I can add a little head turn. And now I can use whatever tools I want. I can use Animbot, Tween Machine, whatever. She's doing her dance. That was a little quick. But now I can make this little change where she's going to do her dance. She's going to turn her head over to look at a friend and continue to dance, and all is well. Right? And if I'm not sure I like this, I can always take my layers and adjust the strength and say I can turn it off, turn it on, turn it to 50%, whatever. And it is an additive layer on top of the original data. We could do another video on layers. I have one if you want to check it out. I'll link in the description if you want to go into animation layers and see what's what. But if you have more questions on the actual process of and workflow of dealing with motion capture or more dense keyframe data, we can talk about this in another video. But for this video, I think we got our 3 things. I'll also call out really quick that the arms have the same thing. If you grab the arms, right click, there's also an IK switcher. And if this is all something you want to go deeper into, I do have a Maya workshop that goes into a lot of this kind of stuff and deeper workflows and tools and how to do more with this. But I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe if you'd like to see more like this. Huge thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching. And as always, I'm Sir Wade. See you in the next video.